What's up, Coachable family? Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Tori Gordon. This week is special. I say that every week, but I mean it this week, okay? Carissa Johnsen is in the house here live in Las Vegas in the studio at Blue Wire Studios here in the Wynn. It's a pleasure, an honor to have you, my dear. You are a force to be reckoned with in this world. You are a seeker. You are after the truth. You are after similar things that my heart is like seeking and longing for, which is deeper connection to self and to other and to the divine. And we're going to get to do a little of that today. Just to give a little formal introduction to who Carissa is so that you guys know a little bit about her. She is an international spiritual guide, transformational speaker, and podcast host of Transcendent Leadership. She's got a master's degree in clinical psychology, is a certified shamanic practitioner, guided energy medicine facilitator, intuitive and energy healer with 8 years of experience in the field of transformation. She's been seen on stages with people like Michael Bernard Beckwith, Dr. Joe Vitale, Maria Diamond, Les Brown, and she's really focused on supporting public figures, leaders, CEOs, and high-performing humans into transcending limitation and creating massive results so they can experience unlimited success without the sacrifice. Now, that is the key that I want to jump into today, is this idea of what does success mean? The illusion of success that so many of us have fallen trapped and into, I know I have, and what does redefining it on our terms look like without having to sacrifice who we are in the process? So, without getting too far into like this conversation too far, just like, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Truly such an honor to have you in my life and be in this space with you and just come together with a pure and holy intention to just really raise the consciousness of humanity and just make our mark and contribution to the world. So it's a beautiful time to be alive and a beautiful time to be here with you.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that's one of the things I love most about you is your dedication to service and being a contribution in the world. And you do that in so many ways with your work and your thought leadership and your speaking. And I know today will be no different. Can you just give people a little bit of background on your journey in terms of what you thought success looked like and your journey to kind of trying to attain that idea of success? What did success mean to you growing up?
Yeah. I think we all have, I was thinking about this the other day. I was having a conversation with our friends, Jake and Carrie, and just really asking myself, are my beliefs actually mine? Or were they just programmed and I've adopted them unconsciously? And it wasn't until I actually achieved what is stereotypically viewed as success that I realized that that wasn't my version. That wasn't my definition. That wasn't what I really wanted. And so in 2018, I had literally everything on paper that most people could want. It was actually getting into 2019 and then 2020. I had multiple 6 figures cash made in my business, multiple 5-figure cash months, sold out private coaching packages, the penthouse, the Range Rover, like designer clothing, everything that growing up I idealized. And I looked at people who had that and said, I want that. And not realizing until I reached that moment that I was the most unhappy. In order to get to that place, I had sacrificed everything. I was dealing with really significant health issues, navigating hormonal imbalances, gut issues, digestion, chronic pain in my body. I was navigating the aloneness because I had sacrificed my relationships to get there, prioritizing work over everything. I had sacrificed my peace and my mental health for productivity. Every moment was filled with being on my phone, posting something, replying to something, launching something, emailing someone. It was this never-ending hit of dopamine, and I got addicted to it. And my background has been really filled with a lot of like subtle addiction tendencies. When I was growing up, I had a single parent and got into substance use at a very young age. So when I got to that moment, I didn't really realize that that's what was happening. I didn't really realize I was unhappy until I remember this distinct moment, and this like makes me so emotional thinking about, because it it was never a place I thought I would be. Again, I had everything on paper and I could not get out of bed. And I had clients voxering me and I was overwhelmed and I was resenting them. And I was in pain. I couldn't get out of bed. My like ovaries were hurting just from like stress and cortisol and all of that. My whole body was just dysfunctioning. And my mom was like, I can't get in touch with you. I just was isolating. I had no one. And during this time, it was during COVID. So I was isolated. I had just moved to a new area. I was alone and I had virtually crawled down my stairs to get downstairs. And I looked at myself in the mirror and I didn't know the woman in front of me. I didn't know anything about her. I had people who asked me, what do you do for fun? And I did not have an answer. Work, coach, those are aspects of what I do and I love, but it became the identity of who I was. And so, yeah, success for me at that time looked like materialism and looked like having the spotlight and looked like having the influence. But I realized I had sacrificed not just myself, but everything that fundamentally means something to me in order to have that. And it was that rock bottom moment that was the catalyst to me diving deep into shamanic work, into energy medicine, into my true path, and redefining what success is, which looks totally different now.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that path that you're on now and how you found that. But I'd love to know, like, what do you think was the internal belief that was driving you at that time in your life to attain that version of success? Like, what was that thing that you were chasing, and where do you think that you picked up that belief from?
Yeah, I know this very well. Love. I was chasing love, and I was seeking it outside of myself. And growing up, I had a father who was really loving, but showed his love and demonstrated his love through acknowledging my achievements. My dad is a very good person, but my parents have, a lot of their own trauma. And so when I got my master's degree, I remember just getting off the stage. We go to get dinner. I'm sitting down and I'm like elated because I'm a first generation college student, a first generation graduate student. And I had graduated summa cum laude, like with honors, which was knowing my history, which was astounding to me
deal.
Even. And my dad looked at me and said, when are you going to get your doctorate? I was like, oh, that just hurts. It just really hurts. So I was seeking love, but I was seeking it from this earthly plane of existence. I was seeking it in achievement. I was seeking it through validation, not realize what I was really fundamentally seeking was the love and presence of creator, of presence, of connection to people that we all embody, that we all have. So that was a really defining moment for me when I had that. And then it became those micro moments that I was constantly remembering. I'm looking for love. I'm looking for connection. And I'm yearning for that in other people, in things, thinking that when I get this thing, then I'm going to be lovable. So the belief system that was operating in the background is that I'm not lovable unless I have blank. And the thing that was the blank was constantly changing. Right. So I'd get it, and then it would be like, oh, but it's not that, so it must be this thing. And then I'd get that, and it was, oh, it's not that, so it must be this thing. And so it was this never-ending seeking, and what I was really seeking was the end of seeking.
Right.
So what I'm really looking for is to not look anymore and to really be okay exactly where I'm at with what I'm doing, with who I am, and just really allowing myself to walk the path and the journey, being okay and loving me.
Do you think you were aware of this at the time, that that's what you were really after? Or was that like that was how it was presenting, but were you aware that that was the subconscious belief that was driving that behavior, that you were really after love and connection and oneness with yourself, and to like bridge the gap between this part of you that felt separate from the world and thought that to fill that void, it was out there?
Mm.
Or did that realization and awareness come later for you?
I've always known it was there. It reminds me of I'm seeing like a visual of a stove.
Mm.
And on the stove, you know what's on the other burners, but you might be focused on like the front one. So that was simmering in the background and I was very much aware of it. I wasn't aware of how significant it was driving me.
Mm-hmm.
I was aware that it was there, it was present, but it wasn't top of mind. It wasn't like right before I made a decision. I was like, "Oh, I'm doing this for love. I'm doing this for validation." I would notice that I didn't feel good. I would notice that I didn't feel aligned or congruent like there was a lack of peace with my decision making. But when you're on that like dopamine high and that seeking, you just kind of live in that state constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So because I was operating from such a survival state, it was really hard to discern what was my truth versus what is trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that was difficult. So I always knew it was there. I just wasn't aware of how much it was really driving until I reached that moment where I looked at myself and I didn't even know who I was, what I loved, what I liked, what I really wanted. Everything, every way I was operating seemed to be from some external place that I just adopted because I just saw like I had coaches who did certain things. I had mentors and parents and friends. And so because I didn't love myself, I didn't know who I was grasping onto everybody else's identity, their way of doing things until it just got to a breaking moment. So it was always there and it's still there. That's part of me is still there. You know, people talk about the death cycle and the portal that you go through. And yes, I think a part of us dies off to rebirth anew, but that part of me is still very much here and wanting love from me.
Sure.
And that nurturing from me.
What do you think are the biggest lies you and maybe those listening that we believe about what success really is?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. What are the beliefs that we believe about success? Yeah, that it has to be hard, that we have to sacrifice, that at some point it'll get better. Once I get to 7 figures, then I'll relax. Or once my children are this age, then I'll go travel. It's the when I this, then that syndrome. When I get this, then that. And so, yeah, I think that encompasses like all of it for me. That's the biggest lie is when I have something else, then I can feel different. When the opposite is actually true. When you allow yourself to access peace, when you allow yourself to be in a conscious state of love and acceptance, then your circumstance changes.
Yeah.
But it's only from that place can we actually even enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking about this myself because I, like you, have in my past achieved a level of success that I thought would fulfill and then felt empty. And it's that dissonance between what I thought I was going to feel and what I actually was internally experiencing that shows me the contrast and is like, oh, this isn't it.
Mm-hmm.
But I can continue, most people, unless we wake up and become aware of these things, live on that rat race our entire lives, right? Continue going one thing to another, searching for a feeling, not just a thing. We're looking for a feeling that we think it will give us, right? And some of the things that I was considering about what we think is required to like be quote unquote successful. Most of us definitely have success and money linked in our minds.
Oh yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And we're constantly chasing more. This just like obsession with more. I was actually watching a video on YouTube recently. I showed it to Nikki the other night, maybe last night, and it's by Alan Watts. Mm-hmm. It's after school's channel where they draw and depict what they're talking about. And it's Alan Watts that says the video is what happens when you only pursue pleasure. And he presents the question as, what do you desire? What do you really desire? Right? And a lot of us, especially coming out of college, we're like, okay, well, what's the next thing? Am I going to get a job? Am I going to go get my doctorate? Am I going to go get the next degree now? and how often we teach our children to do things they don't like doing, to continue to do things so they can continue to do things and go on doing things they don't like doing. And we teach our kids to do the same. And basically he says it's much better to live a short life doing something that's meaningful than to live a long life spent in a miserable way.
Mm-hmm.
But yet we're so addicted to this idea that like we should do things a certain way and success looks a certain way, and that it comes from doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much pressure on us to do it all and to be it all. And as a byproduct of that, we have to sacrifice.
Yeah.
What do you say to the person who's listening to you right now, who's burnout, who's looking at their lives and's like, man, I've worked so hard on this. I've said no to so many things. I've been hustling my ass off. I go from side hustle to side hustle thinking it's going to be the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to make me successful. And they feel just exhausted. And like you and like I are craving that internal fulfillment, that thing that's finally going to fill up that hole that feels so empty and that vast like divide within themselves. And it's like, where is that going to come from? What did you need to hear at that point in your life?
There's another way. Like really simple. We're taught one way. And I wore a badge of honor for things being hard. It needed to be earned. I needed to sweat. There needed to be blood and tears. And yet I didn't know that anything else is possible. We really only know what we're exposed to. And if we're only exposed to there is one way to do things, we don't really realize. It's like the person who grows up in a small town. They don't really realize there's a whole world out there. There's other ways of doing and operating. And so for the person who's navigating that, like I feel you and I see you and I see that part of you, because it's not you, right? There's a part of you that feels like it has to be that way. But it's through having conversations like this and people like us saying that we've been there and we found another way. It's like the people who are blazing new trails. Come with me. Let us show you. And it's a challenge because it really requires a complete dismantling of your entire reality. And from that, there's grief. This is like really landing for me right now, because once that I realized it didn't have to be that hard, I didn't just feel like I landed at Disney World.
Right.
I was like, if it didn't have to be this hard, what about the last 30 years of my life that I did believe this? What did I miss out on? And I went into a really profound grief process around what I thought life was, who I thought I was. And that was where the work is. Going and moving through that grief and getting around other people who are living in a different way to help show you what else is possible. And from that place, it requires also, from a physiological perspective, there has to be new neural pathways that fire, because brain chemistry shows us that once you have a belief system, it gets ingrained, and you have cognitive biases and you look for certain things that you believe to validate your belief system. So once you have a new belief system, it's not like there's sunshine and rainbows. That's when you have to continue to choose every single moment. This is not my path. This is not my story anymore. I'm going to continue to lean into what's uncomfortable. And that's really where faith comes in. It's choosing to believe something that you don't have evidence for yet. And so even if you don't have a community or don't know that people who are doing it, there's a nudge, there's a trust, there's an invitation to look at things differently. And there's a choice that for me and many of the people that I work with is required every day, that you make that choice. And as you make that choice, it might not feel easier and you might feel like you're regressing in some ways, but you're really deepening these new neural pathways. And then your whole world becomes different and your reality changes. And then you stay on the journey, you know, that continues to unfold.
Well, that's the thing, right? We think success is a destination.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Right.
That's one of the lies.
Yeah.
Is that we'll get there.
Yeah.
And then even if we attain some idea of it, then then like you said, the goalpost is moving again. And yes, we need goals. We want to grow and progress, but not from the place of if I don't, then insert something negative about me. I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not valuable,
I'm bad.
I'm bad.
That was one for me. Yeah.
If like really I want people to like let that land. Like if you aren't doing it all, like if I don't do it all, if I don't sacrifice, if I don't forego my sleep, my well-being, my self-care, because how many of us have that belief? It's like, I'll sleep when I die. There's so much to do.
Yeah.
And
Right.
we like hold on to that as like you said, a badge of honor.
Yeah.
Like I'm willing to work harder than you.
Yeah.
And we like idolize this like hustle culture that is actually extremely toxic to our
Everything.
inner world.
Yep.
And it shows up in our bodies, in our exhaustion, in our immune systems. But the person that's like, I have to, because I don't know another way. And if I don't, then I think my life's going to come crumbling down. That's actually like, can you sit with for a moment that what if that was actually not true? Like that can be revolutionary for somebody.
Yeah. And also for that too, like your life may come crumbling down because what you've built might not actually be what's in full alignment for you and integrity for you and your path. So that for me, it was that knowing that that's probably going to happen and the fear that I wouldn't be able to handle it. You know, so, you know, you get past a certain point in some ways where like you're continuing to repattern and your life doesn't crumble. But at the beginning, yeah, it's like the tower moment where it really does fall apart so that you can actually bring it together in a way that's true for you.
Well, let's just consider like someone that you would probably think is very successful. And somebody who always comes to mind for me is Robin Williams. Right?
Oh, yeah.
In so many ways, the epitome of success. Comedian, Oscar winner, icon, incredibly good at his craft. Beautiful family, has all the money in the world, fame, fortune, kills himself. You know, it's just like, what is it going to take for people to wake up and realize that having things isn't going to fulfill you? And only sometimes it takes actually getting there to realize that. And then you grieve all of the time you spent chasing it and all the time you I don't think wasted, but you can't get back. So when people start to have that awareness and they're like, okay, if the accomplishment, the accolade, the degree, the title isn't the thing that's actually going to fulfill me, what is? What have you found in your life as you started to redefine this for yourself? What does success mean to you now? And how do you find fulfillment in the journey instead of achieving some type of destination?
Yeah. I'm still in the process of redefining that, truthfully, because it was so ingrained. There's still like well, is it that? Are you sure? It's not that? It still pokes, still prods. It's like still inviting me to deepen in my trust and my faith. But I've realized that peace for me is true happiness. You know, I could list off like peace, happiness, connection, love. But fundamentally, when you're at peace, it's like you're connected to the source of all that is. You know, you realize that you're not alone. And I realize for me that nothing is going to give me that but me. And it's going to require me to really dismantle everything I thought about who I was and what this reality is in truth. You know, I love the idea of being able to create. And I love the idea of my creations getting into the world. So I don't want to lose the 3D. It's fun to podcast and it's fun to get a new car. Like those things can be fun, but I don't source my sense of self from that. I don't rely on those things to validate who I am. So as I continue to redefine what success is to me, I continue to ask myself about pleasure and peace. What is pleasurable for me, and is this going to offer me peace? And if my relationships don't offer that, if my business isn't in integrity with that, if my health isn't there, then that's going to invite me to reevaluate what I'm doing. And again, I want to reiterate a lot of the work that I've done and a lot of the things that I help people with, it's still having what's successful for you. There's still something meaningful about results and meeting your edges and accomplishing something. It's just it's just peeling back the layers and asking who's driving that, what are you doing it for, and why?
Yeah, that's the thing.
That's the thing.
Because when we ask why, and those that are listening, if you want to follow along, I encourage you to try this. Like, answer the question, I want to be successful because blank. For me, maybe it's, I want to be successful because I want to have a big house one day. I want to be able to go on vacation. I want people to know my name. Okay, then ask the question, why? Why do I want to do that? Why do I want to go on vacation? Why do I want the big house? Why do I want people to recognize me? Someone stopped us outside the studio and was like, can I take a picture? My ego loves that. My ego is like, yes, I'm recognizable. People know me. My face is on the wall. There's part of me that enjoys that, right? But that's, again, it's like I've also had to do the work. It's like, what is that the thing I'm after? And if so, why? But it's like, okay, if I want the big house and you then ask why, it's like, well, because I didn't have that growing up. Okay, well, why is that important to you? Because I never want to go without. I never want to have to say no to, maybe my kids. I want my kids to have a life that I didn't have growing up. And when we ask that and we go, the exercise is like 7 levels deep. When I did that for myself, I realized the ultimate driver of why I did everything in my life was because I was desperate to be good enough. Like I was like, why do I care about being such a good girl? Why do I care about being the best at everything, being the girl with the best grades and getting summa cum laude and all of the things? It's like, why? Because then I'm good enough. And like you said, then I'm lovable. But when you get down to the root cause of what's actually driving you, then that's only when you can actually start to give that thing to yourself now and recognize the need or the void that's within you that you're trying to fill, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, because you can still want that stuff. I want the big home. I want to make an impact. Primarily, mostly, I'm an Enneagram 2, Wing 3, so I desire to inspire other people. So a lot of what I do does have the anchor point of I want to help other people see what else is possible. I want to live in such a way that people see another way. And so it is really important to get down to why. And I think you're referring to the exercise where you keep going deep. Yeah, I do that often to myself. And when you get to the bottom, it's like, oh yeah, that's really what's here. And so it's not about changing the desires. If the desire is on your heart, it's planted there for a reason. It's just getting into congruence and including your heart in that process and really asking your heart. Your heart is very intelligent. It's one of the strongest magnetic fields in the body. They've actually done studies that it has its own consciousness and nervous system. And they've done studies where it actually responds to images before the image is seen. This leads. This is how we lead ourselves and other people. So if we can ask our hearts what it wants and include that in the process, I think it makes a really big difference in every area of life.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. What brings you the most fulfillment right now in your life?
Community.
Mm.
I feel really fulfilled in contributing to community and being a part of something that feels bigger than me. You know, I felt like I thought fulfillment was in my coaching clients and, you know, retreats and all that. And that was satisfaction. It was enjoyment. That was gratifying. But for me, the fulfillment is remembering how tribal beings we are and how we thrive in connection with other people. And so being in community right now feels really fulfilling because I have in the past been very unconscious with the ways that I showed up in the world, where my desire to show up for somebody still had a very self-serving place, where I would be like, I'm going to show up for this person, and so maybe they'll show up for me. Or I'm going to do this so that I can receive that, not really realizing that. So what feels really fulfilling for me is showing up in a community environment where I can offer somebody something from the goodness of my heart with no expectation. I think contribution, whatever that looks like for me, it looks like community. In the long term for me, I'd like to be very philanthropic and humanitarian and really go to communities with these low socioeconomic communities and underprivileged people and go give back just because I can and I want to. Like, that fills my heart. That fills me up with joy beyond anything that achievement could. So it's giving with the understanding and the knowing and the desire to not actually receive and just offer something to someone, like in a way kind of anonymously, just like, I want to offer this to you. So it feels really good to give back right now.
Yeah, definitely. I'm curious, like, as you've started to redefine this, you found, like what you said earlier, is like, there's another way. What is that way for you, that you have found as that alternative? And what does that just look like practically in your life, or what actually shifted in your mindset? Was there somebody that gave you context for this? Or were you just believing, having faith in something you had no evidence for? Or did you come into contact with somebody who's like, actually, like someone listening to you is like, you're saying there's another way. Okay.
What's the other
What
way?
is it?
Yeah. So the reason why many times we believe that there's one way is certainly programming, but is also because of trauma and things of that nature. And so I had a pretty significant amount of trauma from sexual abuse growing up and from just the ways in which I was parented or whatever. And so the other way didn't just land in my lap and I was like, there's the way. It was the way that I chose to create it and realize that I have a very specific way. And that's the hard part, is once you realize there's another way, you want somebody to show you the exact way.
But that becomes their way.
That becomes their way. Yes. Right, exactly.
As soon as you're following someone else's way, it's not yours.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it's not, what do you actually do following them for, right? You're still seeking. So that's really the most challenging part, is to realize that the way is meant for you to create. The journey is about you paving it for yourself and recognizing what is the path for you. And so my path looked like healing my trauma first before trying to get somewhere again, and taking a pause from everything. And I realized not everybody can do that. I luckily had the luxury to do that for around 4 or 5 months. And once I was able to heal, I was able to really relinquish a lot of the image that I had been portraying, that I overly identified with. Here's the work that I do. Here is who I am. Here are the results that I get people. That's what I thought I was. That's who I thought I was. Not realizing I'm the consciousness behind that. And so once I started to heal, I started to come back into what I think we're all coming into, which is home within ourselves. And because I was able to come into home, I'm not operating from these mental faculties or these survival strategies. of once I do this, I'm going to receive love, or once I have that, etc. I'm able to be in connection with the universe and the creator of all that is. We are not separate. The belief that we are separate is what causes us to believe that we are.
Mm-hmm.
God is not outside of us. And I use God, the word loosely. It doesn't need to mean religious, dogmatic. For me, it's the creator. It's the essence of what's inside of us. It's the presence of unconditional love. You know, I was asked this question on a podcast the other day, what is God to you? And I'm still figuring that out. I don't have the answer. And I love that I don't have the answer because I don't want the answer. I love seeking. I love truth, but like not seeking from like needing to know, but the curiosity of the playfulness of life.
Mm-hmm.
What is life? What is happening? What is all of this? So the path for me started with trauma healing and led me to a place where I could be in wholeness. I could retrieve the parts of myself that were fractaled off, that had me believing that somebody else was better than me, that I needed to do this thing. And when I could be really present in every single moment, I could realize the power of my heart and what's guiding me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And from that place, I received answers. For me, my path has been shown to me from getting really quiet and still and praying and asking for the way to be shown and not being overly distracted by my phone and technology and work. Because it's not that we're disconnected, it's that we're distracted.
Yes. I was going to say, I think one of the identifying qualities, the things that we can identify in ourselves when we're kind of aligned with this false narrative of what success looks like is a lot of that comparison.
Yeah.
We're constantly looking at what is everybody else doing and should I be doing that too?
Because we want to belong.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the quietness and in the stillness, you're not looking out at the world and saying, do I look enough like you? Am I doing the right things? Is this like I'm building programs because that's what they're doing and I think that's what's necessary. It's like, no, what's actually alive in me and how can I bring that forward into the world and give myself permission to create that, even if it looks completely different than what everybody else is doing. Right. And that takes a lot of courage.
So much courage.
Because like you said, you don't have evidence that it's going to work.
No. And
everyone wants certainty.
Yep. Everyone wants certainty. And there's principles of influence that are playing out all around us of authority, right? So once we see somebody who has the thing, our psychology goes, that's the thing. They know the way. It's why commercials have, people talking about prescriptions with doctor's coats on them who are not doctors. We all want the confidence and the conviction and to be like, well, they know, they know the way. And so it does require a lot of devotion and a lot of micro decisions in every moment to choose where your heart is leading you. Mm-hmm. And that sounds esoteric and abstract, but it really does speak to you. And life is always speaking to you. Once I got really connected to spirituality in a way of connecting really with spirit, I saw answers in the trees. I saw answers in somebody else's eyes. I received answers from music and songs that came on when I was thinking about what am I going to do? And all of a sudden a song comes on and I'm like, I noticed a subtle shift in my energy. But if you're living in this survival state, if you're constantly distracted, you don't actually pick up on those subtleties because we are divinely led. If people really understood how much orchestration is happening in the spiritual world to provide us with support and answers, it would blow all of our minds. I mean, I'm still coming into full awareness around that. So it is truly about listening and not forcing and trusting the divine timing. And yeah, that's where the work is in it. And sometimes requires a lot of us to like really choose again and again and again.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever read the book, The Alchemist?
I haven't, but I know everybody talks to me about it and I really resonate with the concept.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I highly recommend if this conversation resonates with you, go read that book because it's a fiction book, but it really depicts this journey that you were really talking about of like tapping into what does my soul desire, and how do I actually let that lead me, and how the world, how the universe will support you um, in that endeavor, um, through guidance, through hearing a song, through like, oh, being introduced to a book, right? Um, Meeting someone at the perfect timing. It's like these little winks from the universe that I like to get up in the morning. And when I was really in this part of my life too, I would get up and I would be like, look for the evidence that I'm being guided. Because instead, I had to trade the idea that I am lost. Because at the time, when you start to wake up to this and you're like, wait, this doesn't fulfill me. I'm not happy. I don't want to be and have the stress and responsibility of my boss. My health is failing. I'm disconnected in my relationships. They're all really surface level. I'm isolating myself. I'm overworking. I'm comparing myself. Like, these are all of the symptoms of being out of alignment, right? And I had all of them. And I was waking up and I was like, okay, so if this isn't the way and there is another way, I need to go out I would go out and be like, okay, show me that I'm being guided, because I don't know where I'm going. But like, I traded in that idea that I'm lost to I'm guided. And then it's like, okay, little wink. I meet, I was in that when you and I met.
Yeah, we were in a similar space.
Not that long ago, you guys. Like, this was not that long ago. And I had been traveling with the intention. I had no plan. I didn't know where I was going to go. I was just like, I know this isn't it. I just know this isn't going to lead me. What got me here isn't going to take me there, right? So I got to lean in to trust and faith. And I was at this point, I was like, here's somebody in your path. Here's a phone call from a friend that's inviting you to Vegas. And it was like, wink, wink, say yes. Just say yes. Keep going. And we think we're going to get all of those winks at once. Right. We know exactly where we're going to end up. Wouldn't that be great? Right? Yeah.
And that's the thing, though, too, is we hear the nudges. It's not that we're not hearing them. We're just not trusting them. And that's a big distinction. We're like, I'm not hearing it. I'm like, no, it's there. We're not trusting it, because we're like, for me, there was this really rebellious side of me. It was like, I know better. I would like hear a nudge to do something and I'd be like, no, I got it. Like, it was almost like I didn't want to be in a different place. I was like fighting to stay there. There was part of me that was like loving chewing on how difficult life was for me. And I would meet people and I would tell them how much I was struggling. There was there would be an overexpression of love, right? Oh, yeah, you're really going through it right now. I didn't realize that I was doing that until I was much later out of it. I was like, wow, I was really fighting to hold on to those limitations. But that nudge, that intuition, that guidance, wherever you think it's coming from, doesn't matter to me. But I invite you to really sit with that voice and what it sounds like, and how can you learn to trust it in the micro moments first.
How do you learn to trust that?
Yeah. So the first thing I actually teach my clients and have them do is go on a nature walk. Spending time in nature is a great way to really hear this voice, because when we live in a very developed city or area, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of electromagnetic energy, there's a lot that disrupts our energy field. Scientifically, this isn't necessarily spiritual. It is, but it's science. And so when we, in shamanism and in spirituality, there's a lot of talk about there being soul loss and disconnection from Mother Earth. Mother Earth is really showing us mirroring to us how disconnected we are from her. And for me, really realizing that nature holds so much wisdom. There's wisdom in the voiceless. There's answers and guidance in the unseen worlds. That's what spirituality is. It's navigating the unseen. So one of the first things I have my clients do is go into nature. Put your phone away. Start with putting your phone away first.
Please put your phone away.
Step one, put your phone away. Maybe even don't take it, or put it away on airplane mode, and go outside in nature, and don't have an agenda, and maybe have a lot of space, like maybe not have something for the rest of the day so that you're not on a time crunch. And go out in nature and like just walk and ask spirit to show you. Show me where to go. Thank you for showing me where to go. And just walk and feel the wind and how it like just caresses you and wants to surround you. Hear the birds chirping and the alivenesses that's around you. Feel the essence of life and how you're so connected to it. So, before, I think meditation, a lot of these practices are great, but I think starting in nature and really disconnecting from the matrix in a way is one of the best ways to really hear that guidance. And doing that frequently is what helped me. So I would go on intuitive walks and I would ask spirit to show me the way. Sometimes I'd somehow find my way back and I'd end up in a coffee shop and I'd meet someone or something would happen.
Yeah. I didn't know I wasn't intentionally doing that, but I was doing that during the most transformative period of my life. And it was also during COVID, when COVID hit, and all we had to do, I lived on the bank of a river. And so going out in nature was one of my only things I got to do. But I would go out and I didn't even know where I was going or why, there was nowhere to be, during COVID.
Yeah.
And so in that way, it was actually a gift because I would just like go walking and then I'm like, oh, here's a rock. I'm just going to that calls to me and I'm just going to sit
it
on
calls to you.
and then it sounds so silly, but that was something I started to practice. And it was then I got so filled with inspiration and curiosity, and I wanted to continue to connect in that way. And to your point, when we're so distracted and life is so busy, it's the opposite. Like slowing down is another sign that you're actually starting to get into alignment because you're not obsessed with this urgency culture. It's like, I have to do it all and I have to do it all right now. It's like, can I give up the belief that if I don't do it all right now, I'm actually going to be okay?
Yeah.
Things are still going to be okay. And how much that steals our joy and our pleasure and our enjoyment of the thing we say we like doing, even if you're in a job that you like, but you are so caught up in the busyness of it. Slowing down allows you to actually embrace what's available in the moment that you're doing it.
Yeah. And something I'd like to add to that, because that's beautiful and brilliant said. Sometimes when you slow down, it's going to feel worse at the beginning. We talk about a lot of these rituals and concepts, and because they're so unfamiliar at the beginning, when you slow down, it will likely be one of the most uncomfortable things that you've ever done. And you might feel worse. And you're like, I thought that they said that this was going to happen. You're like,
yes.
Yeah. So sometimes you actually feel worse. And can you be with that feeling? The presence process, Michael Brown, is a great book to really be present with what is. That is the most sacred and loving thing, is just to be with what is. And when you can be with what is, then you can actually transcend. So, recognize in the space of the silence, the things that you've been avoiding might come creeping out. And if you can be with those and love those and look at that as medicine, then you can actually access different states. But first, you got to get through a little bit of the mud sometimes.
Any other just practices that you recommend outside of getting in nature and starting to do those intuitive walks that you either share with your clients or you share with our audience of how to develop that trust for that internal wisdom?
Yeah, I think just overall quickly is prayer. We're for a moment right before we had this podcast is prayer. Where is your attention and intention with everything? Before I invest, I pray. When I get up in the morning, I pray. And if it doesn't land for you to use the word prayer, just intention, bringing your energy forth and into something so it's being directed. Otherwise, it's kind of chaotic. So for me, one of the practices I use all the time is that, and I make everything a ritual. So when I'm showering, I imagine that all of the energy that I've taken on for that day is washing off. When I'm drinking liquid or eating food, I'm imagining my cells are dancing and having a party and enjoying. So making everything a ritual and everything a practice and being the living prayer. And if you're moving through something that is really difficult, I say that, the bigger the pain, the harder the prayer. That doesn't mean harder in terms of making it hard, but go deeper, be devoted into holding that for yourself. And miracles do really happen and show up.
Yeah. I agree. I've experienced them. And And if nothing else, from A Course in Miracles, they define a miracle as a shift in perception.
Yep.
And that's what we're talking about, transcending the belief systems and the ideas and the just the concepts that we have about what success means and what it means to be successful and to have a successful life. When we actually encounter maybe a conversation like this and we have a shift in perception of what it could be and what we want it to be and what we truly desire, like that is a miracle in itself. And that's my intention for this show and this conversation with people, that they maybe just can see something, see their lives, see their work in a little different way, and maybe approach it with more intention or more heart or more just from a slower, more easeful, graceful place within themselves, instead of this need to constantly run and do it all and sacrifice and for the sake of success. I think we've really missed the boat if that's the place that we're coming from.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. I totally agree. It's one breath at a time. If you can just be with your breath, be in this moment, truly you'll be led. And I agree that it's about the miracles. And this could be a miracle that somebody even sees this here. And that's, it's just one person, one moment, one breath. That's all it takes.
Yeah. What are you working on right now, if anything, and how can you share that with our audience so they can know more about you and your work and how you work with your clients? Please tell us kind of about what you're working on and how they can connect with you.
Yeah. So I'm relaunched my podcast, Transcendent Leadership, which I'm really excited about. You're going to be a guest on that.
Yeah.
And so that's coming into full production and show. And then getting ready to host some retreats later this year, likely one in Costa Rica, and just doing private client work and really wanting just everything that I touch and every person that I connect with to just come into their heart and into peace. So I'm on social media at Carissa Johnsen with an E. And I would just love to connect with anybody there and hear any little nuggets that they took away from this podcast, this show.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there are people that are part of this audience that listen to this show that are looking for opportunities to get support, to get in immersive experiences like retreats. So I encourage you guys to go to the show notes, connect with Carissa, find out when she is leading her retreats or how you can work with her if you feel really led and need support in your journey, because we all do. Every single one of us, I myself included, like this is not a destination. This is a continuous, ever-evolving journey that we get to be on. That we get to enjoy. And part of, I think, the lies that we believe about success is that we can do or be successful on our own. And that's actually not true, right? We need each other. We need to be supported and be in community. And if you're looking for that, I know and trust that Chris is such a good support system in and for your journey. So go to the show notes, make sure that you connect with her and connect with us online. We are putting these episodes, if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can also watch us there. If you want to see our faces and the way that we interact in the studio, it gives you a little bit of a different dynamic. And if you just learn better by watching, make sure you go over to our YouTube channel to connect with us there. I'm just grateful every time I get to sit down and share space with somebody who is so committed to their own work and to the journey of going inward and finding the answers and the wisdom within. And so thank you for pointing us back to ourselves, because we are the ones that really have those answers. And we need guides like you to remind us of that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're all leading each other home.
Amen. All right, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Coachable Podcast. Go be coachable this week. I'll see you next week on the Coachable Podcast.